Yeah, it's finally here. We're bringing back top 5 and I'm excited to do it. And we, of course, are starting off with flankers because everybody loves flankers, including myself. And Paladins, they do them right. They're fun, they're mobile, they're high damage, and they have a lot of varied playstyles. So, question of the day. What are your top 5 flanks? I want to know. I give you mine in this video. Give me yours. I don't mind if you agree. I don't mind if you disagree either. But either way, I think you should let me know down in the comments what your favorites are. Now, with top 5 flanks videos or top 5 any videos, these are a very subjective lists. Now, I think I have a lot of good opinions in this game since I've played it for 5 years and I played it professionally on high-level orgs like G2 Esports, SK Gaming, Virtus Pro for about 2.5 to 3 years. So, again, very subjective, but I want to know your opinions on it as well because everybody has a different playstyle and plays the game differently. But without further ado, let's jump right into the video because there is a lot to discuss. Guess what day it is, y'all? Saturday, and guess what that means? It is time for a new challenge. Last week, we started what we'd like to call a challenge series on this YouTube channel. Every single Saturday, we will be announcing a new challenge for y'all to do, and you have about a week to submit either a screenshot or a clip based on the challenge that week to an email, which is provided below in a submission form. And it changes per week. And if you win in your top 2, you will get 200 crystals either emailed to you or sent via your Discord. This week's challenge: get 100k healing on a support. Yeah, that's it. Send a screenshot in and we'll be picking the best screenshots. Now, 100k is the minimum. It's your choice how you want to figure out how to do more. Do you want to party up with friends? Do you want to go into a ranked game? It's totally up to you. But one thing we won't allow is bot games. So don't be going into bot games and farming that healing, or don't go into custom games and sit there for 2 hours farming healing. These actually have to be live matches. So let's make this interesting and good luck on the challenge. So I just want to make a quick disclaimer that this video is recorded pre-Ruby crossover patch. So that means that the Cursed Revolver talent for Androxus is changing, and that's important to note because we're talking about Androxus, and the first things we're going to be talking about are the talents. So if you're watching pre-crossover patch, which is probably about 3 weeks until the patch comes out, you're currently seeing Cursed Revolver as your revolver becomes an automatic dealing 600 damage every 0.5 seconds. Now with the Ruby crossover patch, that is being changed to your revolver applies an effect that lasts for 2 seconds, dealing damage every 0.15. That increase the longer it remains on the enemy. Maximum damage per hit is 50. So your auto attacks kind of increase the damage over time and makes it apply longer and apply more damage. They put Cursed Revolver, the old one, into base kit, dealing 550 damage every 0.5 seconds, which was honestly a good change. Going into the Ruby crossover patch, you're probably looking at playing Cursed Revolver or Godslayer or even Defiance Fist if you want to just dive stuff. I don't think Defiance Fist is as viable, but the other two are usually the meta. Builds. First of all, let's talk about Cursed Revolver build. Abyss Walker 4, Sleight of Hand 2, Through the Warp 2, Power of the Abyss 4, and Elusive 3. This is a build I run for, and it kind of helps with mobility and getting around to get in and get out of fights. Godslayer, Seething Hatred 5, Power of the Abyss 4, Sleight of Hand 2, Abyss Walker 2, and Through the Warp 2. Now, you'll see something consistent throughout all builds is Sleight of Hand, Abyss Walker, and Through the Warp are really important cards for Androxus just because augmenting your dash is very good. And then for Defiance Fist, it's not a very important build to run because Defiance Fist isn't that viable, but you need Abyssal Touch 5, and that's kind of all you need. And then you need to augment your dash in certain ways so you can get in, get your fist off, and then get out. For cards, for Androxus, you're looking at stuff like Nimble, Veteran, Resilience if the other team has a lot of CC, Haven, and honestly, if you're feeding a lot and you're not having a good game, or you just want to get the jump on an enemy or get positioning advantage, Master Riding is always a good thing on almost all flanks. But typically you're looking for your Veterans, your Havens, your Nimbles, and if the team has a lot of crowd control, even Resilience is very good. Like if you're placing against a Damba, you might want to get Resilience for the simple fact that when you're playing Androxus, you're going to get feared a lot. And whenever you have your reversal up, you can get feared through your reversals. So Resilience is a very good buy to counter out those pesky CCers such as Damba. Now, Androxus' playstyle is more right now before Ruby crossover, you're kind of just diving in and looking for the one shot. You're diving in, you're doing a little bit of poke, but you're finding opportunities to finish off kills. You're finding opportunities to just dive in on somebody and insta-give them. But with the Cursed Revolver change, he now has a decent poke. He can sit back, he can apply the dot onto someone, poke, 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 create his own opportunities to dive in and finish kills. He has a little bit less of a dive potential and full one-shot potential, but I don't think it's that far gone. I still think you can still dive in and one-shot somebody, but now he has a more varied playstyle with different talents, and he has a more varied playstyle with his general self, because you don't have to go Cursed Revolver anymore. You can go the new Cursed Revolver, you can go Godslayer or Defiance Fist and just play your own style. His damage is solid and he has hyper mobility. He's a champion that you can easily pick up and be comfortable with, but he has a very high skill cap. Androxus is definitely one of the top 5 flanks in the game, mainly because how notable he is and how much he actually gets done in fights. Next on the list, let's talk about Maeve, the cat burglar herself. And speaking of cat burglar, that's our first talent we're going to talk about. It increases the damage of each of your daggers from your first dagger sets within 5 seconds of prowling, ending by 30%. So pretty much after you prowl, your daggers have increased damage, and this is one of the main talents a lot of people run for Maeve. But a fun part about Maeve is her other 2 talents are actually viable as well. Rogue's Gambit. Increase the damage done by Pounce by 15% and reduces cooldown by 2 seconds. Reset Pounce's cooldown when earning an elim. Now, this talent is typically used as myself, I use it as a hyper mobility tool, a way to get in, get out, get around, get into new places. The cooldown reduced by 2 seconds. I typically don't pounce the enemies. I use this as an extra mobility tool. Street Justice. Pounce executes targets at or below 35% health. If you're playing against characters like Khan, like Fernando, like Yagharoth, this can be a very, very effective talent, or even Rom. With those pesky shields or the high health pool characters, this is something to execute them so they can't get topped off, because we all know how annoying it is to get a tank low and them just get out of caught and get instantly healed up. It's not fun. So again, all talents are kind of viable with Maeve, and that's one really fun part about her. Now, let's talk about builds. With Cat Burglar, you're running a pretty standard build. I currently run this: Sixth Sense, Persistence, Street Cred, Patch Up, and Predation. Pretty much, it makes it to where you're super tanky when you're low, and after you pounce, it makes it just a little bit more sustained. Since Maeve likes to get in and gets in someone's face, the DR helps. A little bit extra health is nice. And then Predation, if you're running Cat Burglar, you want to reset your dash as much as you can to get that bonus damage. Next, with my Rogue's Gambit build, it's pretty similar to the Cat Burglar build, but instead I run full DR because, again, with the mobility and how you want to get in on somebody, we just run more DR. Scamper, I like the movement speed after pounce, since I do use this as a hyper mobility build. It's nice to have that extra movement speed after the pounce just to get to where I want to go. And then 1-point cards are typically up to you, but this is what I run: Street Cred and then Chase. Street Justice. This one is the pounce on execute, so I'm running Predation, Persistence, Street Cred, Sixth Sense, and then Scamper. So Predation, I kind of just like in this build for the simple fact of resetting one of my mobility cooldowns. It feels great, and you can use that reset to get in on someone and to pounce and execute them. So having your prowl up all the time is awesome. Persistence and Sixth Sense are very important cards, because when you're going in for that execute, if you get low, you want to try to sustain and survive, get that execute and get out. So those cards help with that. And then Scamper, increase your movement speed. Again, you need to have that movement speed after you pounce and kill someone to get out and survive and continue on the fight. And then the 1-point card, again, is really up to you. Now, what kind of cards are you buying on Maeve? I'm usually looking at a Haven, a Veteran, even Chronos in some instances. I like Nimble and sometimes Master Writing. So to explain some of these, I think Nimble is a universal good thing on flankers. They already have hypermobility, and having that extra bit of movement speed makes you harder to hit, makes you get in and get out faster. It is also a very just convenient card on a lot of champions in this game. So flanks in particular, I like it on. And then when you're looking at Haven and Veteran, again with Maeve, and she has a lower health pool, you really do need to survive these fights. She does a lot of burst damage, but she's easy to kill. so extra DR and extra sustain is always nice. Now, Maeve has very long cooldowns on her Q, on her right click, on her, on her reset. It is very long. So buying a Chronos sometimes does help you survive and stay alive. I don't think Chronos is something you buy every game, but if you can afford it and you're feeling like getting interesting with it, go ahead. And in Resilience, if the other team has crowd control, it's just nice to have. So be on the lookout if they have crowd control. Now, Maeve's playstyle is kind of depending on the person and the talent you're playing. If you're playing something like Rogue's Gambit, you can use it as a poke playstyle. You can use it to find off angles. Now, what is an off angle? That means the enemy, you're not hitting the enemy from the front. You're taking a side, you're taking one side and poking them from the side. You're not facing them up front, you're facing them from the side, and you're not really flanking, but you're kind of just, again, hitting them from the side. So you're finding your mobility to use that as a poke tool, and then after you do poke, you then look to go in and then execute or finish your kill or have somebody else finish it. Or with Street Justice, you are in a very dive playstyle. You are looking to poke tanks, you are looking to poke a little bit of their backline, and then you are looking to just full dive and find that execute onto somebody. So it really just depends on what you're playing the talent-wise for her playstyle, and then it varies on the person as well. Maeve's damage is solid. I think she doesn't bring anything overwhelming. Her daggers are fairly difficult to hit, so learning her daggers is one of the most important playstyles on Maeve, important things to learn, because the arc and the fall off, again, the damage doesn't fall off, but there is an arc to the daggers, so you do have to learn that and learn how to predict people and lead them. So the damage is solid as soon as you learn how to hit your daggers, and again, 2 are thrown out, so you have to lead 2 daggers. So as soon as you learn that, it'll be really good. Her mobility is off the charts. She has a prowl, which is an increased movement speed, her pounce, which is a short dash, and then her other ability resets those 2 abilities, so her mobility is absolutely cracked. And then her ultimate blinds everyone. That is a very good ultimate whenever you want to full dive or you want to get a quick execute onto a tank and not have to take any damage or die for it. Maeve, overall an amazing flank, and she easily fits in the top 5 flankers for Paladins. Now, depending on your skill level, you will agree or disagree with this placement in this list. Skye. I think she is a very strong flanker at low to mid tier levels for one simple fact that people do not turn around and look at you. You get away with a lot of stuff and people don't buy Illuminate. Even at a higher level, some different playstyles in Skye work. So I do fit her into a top 5 flanks in Paladins because not everybody is a high level player, and this champion for a majority of players is very annoying and understandably. Talents. Debilitate. Increase the damage done by poison bolts by 25% and the rate which they deal damage by 100%. Now, this talent is really good for poke damage and really good to burn down tanks, and is one of my favorite talents to play because you just see a lot of damage numbers and it feels good. Smoke and Dagger. Benefits from your smoke screen cards also benefit allies who enter the smoke screen, and allies are healed for 100 every 1 second while in your smoke screen, but smokescreen no longer applies stealth to you. That was a recent nerf. I don't know if it was particularly necessary because this talent was good beforehand and now it's kind of fallen off, but I still think it's worth talking about in this top 5. Now, let's talk about the builds just a little bit. These builds are pretty similar, but one card has changed. Debilitate, Healing Vapors, Poisoner, Confound, Quick Smoker, and Emergency Exit. I find Emergency Exit to be a really good card and is kind of OP in a sense because when you drop into stealth, you can fire about 3 or 4 shots before it takes you out of stealth. So for some reason, this allows you to get free shots in stealth. This card, I always underestimated, and then I had it destroy me a few games. I'm like, wait a second, this card is actually kind of broken. Healing Vapors, it's just self-sustained for yourself, and even without Smoke and Daggers, you still want to run it. Poisoner, your main damage is Debilitate, so you want to reduce the cooldown on your Poison Bolts. And then Confound. Smokescreen is a very good ability, and if you want to watch my Skye Tech short, which will pop up in the I section at some point, you can see how you can use that smoke to full effectiveness and not have the enemy see where your smoke is and have a hard time finding you. Quick Smoker, just kind of threw that in there. 1-point cards, again, are something that is very dependent on the player, and I think there are some characters where 1-point cards are necessary and specific 1-point cards are necessary, but on this character, no, not at all. Smoke and Dagger. Now, some of them call this support Skye talent, and it kind of is. Healing Vapors 5, yet again. Quick Smoker, Dissipate, Confound, and Poisoner. Now, Dissipate is the new card added, and Poisoner has been reduced because I do not think it's that important. Yes, you want to get the resets on your smoke, but you would rather have some semblance of a utility within your smoke for allies. 32% movement speed is nothing to be scoffed at while they're in it, and I believe it lasts for 2 seconds as soon as they walk out of it. That is very, very good. And if you're getting resets on your smoke and you're constantly getting smokes out, then you're really looking at high healing, high utility on a flanker for allies. Yeah, support Skye is kind of a thing, and it's more of an off support Skye than a main support, but it's actually still kind of viable. Cards, you're looking at Nimbles, Kronos' Resilience, Vets, and Havens, kind of like the rest. But the big difference is Kronos isn't really as viable on Debilitate as it is as Smoke and Dagger. When you're running off support, Kronos gets so much more value because you need to get those cooldowns online as soon as possible. So Kronos is more for Smoke and Dagger, but the rest you can buy on either talent. Yes, I know I skipped a talent, Preparation. I don't think it's good at all, and you should never be running it. I just wanted to note that now because I'm sure someone's typing in the comments like, oh, you missed my favorite talent. It might be your favorite talent, but it's not very good. Excuse me. Anyway, but yeah, honestly, Nimble's really good on Skye because she needs, once she goes in stealth, she needs that Nimble to get in on somebody. Since she doesn't have any gap closers and it's just her stealth, she doesn't have any quick gap closers, I should say, and it's just her stealth. You need the Nimble to get in on somebody. If they have crowd control, you're looking at Resilience. And then for a little bit extra sustain for yourself, Veteran Haven is always nice. Now, there are 3 different ways to play Skye. Yeah, there's a lot of play styles. You have a poke heavy support based, so more Smoke and Dagger. You're getting your poison darts onto tanks, and you're kind of just helping your point tanks and working front to back. She can be a tank buster with Debilitate. You do a lot of damage to tanks with Debilitate and kind of burst DPS as well with it. So you're kind of throwing the enemies off because they're not expecting this type of damage coming from Skye. And then you have the invisible flanking, killing the backline over and over playstyle on Skye. This only works at a lower level, but this is a viable playstyle for sure. Skye's damage falls off pretty hard at range. You need to be about mid-range to get full effectiveness. Even short range get full effectiveness out of her damage, even with the recent buffs in the Ruby crossover patch. But if you're on a shorter map, that's where Skye really becomes viable. So like a Bright Marsh and Ice Mines, etc. Skye's ability isn't great. She just has her stealth, which isn't... It is like mobility, but it's not like a dash that can take you up to high ground, or it's not like a very quick dash like Vatu that can take you across the map in about 2 seconds. She just goes stealth. That's her gimmick, and that's all it is. So mobility, not very good, while her ultimate is also lackluster and poor. Now, right now with the audio bug, if Skye's in the enemy team and you can't hear her, it's kind of OP because the ultimate you can't hear ticking, and then you just realize, oh, there's a red thing on my... Okay, I'm dead. Honestly, that's really the only time that ultimate gets value is with the audio bug right now. Skye as a whole deserves to be in the top 5 flankers for Paladins for the simple fact that she is so dominant in lower ranks that I cannot ignore that fact. Skye, top 5 flank. Let's talk about the next one, which is going to be Vora. Vora is an amazing champion and honestly one of the more well-designed champions in Paladins. After the ult nerfs, I think her ultimate was far too overpowered for a long time, but with the nerfs, it is easily in line. She does a lot of things great, and her kit is, again, one of the best. Talents: Relentless Presence. Tendril gains a second charge. This is fun. It just increases your mobility and lets you get in, get out, and do whatever you want at any point. It is a very fun talent to play, but I don't think it's as viable as Unyielding Pressure. Your Dark Siphon now deals an additional 10% of the target's maximum health as damage over 1.5 seconds. This can easily burn through tanks and adds this extra level of damage against damage dealers or flanks that helps you burst them down in time so you can win your duels. Builds: Relentless Presence. Sharpened Resolve, New Purpose, What May Come. Elegant pairing and Dance with Fate. This build is just based on your tendril. You now have 2 charges of it, so let's take full advantage of it. What May Come gives you some damage reduction for using it and reduces your Dark Siphon and Obliteration, or other 2 abilities when using your mobility. Again, 2 charges, double the value from these 2 cards. Why not run it? And then cooldown on tendril reduced by 2.4 seconds. These cards are all so strong that I ran them all in 4 just so I can get max value out of each one while min-maxing the build, because Sharpen Resolve is also a very, very good card that you should be running on Vora, and we run even more in the next build, which is for Unyielding Pressure. And yes, again, I know there's a 3rd talent for Vora, but I don't think it's viable, so I don't think it's worth the time to talk about. What May Come, Sharpen Resolve, New Purpose, the Maw's Embrace, and Elegant Pairing. Again, I think these 2 cards are great, Elegant Pairing and What May Come, but not as viable because you are not having a 2nd charge of Tendril, so we ran them both at 3. Sharpen Resolve, as we discussed before, is a very, very good card. This gives you a ton of healing when you consume your Darkness stacks. Darkness stacks are applied when you auto-attack an enemy, and once you have 5, it augments each one of your next abilities a different way, which is an amazing design for Vora. Very, very good card. It needs to be ran in this build. New Purpose, some extra health just to increase your sustain, increase your survivability, because Vora is, as we'll talk about later, kind of an anti-flank and does well in duels. Maw's Embrace, this is one of those that you can just do what you want with. 1 point card, I don't think it's important to run what I ran, so kind of run what you want. 4 cards, you're looking again at Veterans, Havens, Nimbles, and even a morale boost. Now, I know I did say her ultimate is in a nerfed state, but it still is strong. It increases your movement speed and makes you CC immune and can execute targets. Now, the indicator and hitting the ultimate can be difficult because it's a little bit wonky and kind of like off-centered. But if you just use it for mobility and to get out of tight situations, buying a morale boost is nice because you can just use it as an extra movement ability, because when you cancel it, you get alt charge back. Nimble, Veteran, and Haven, again, are all the same standard things. A little bit extra sustain to stay alive, extra movement speed on flanks is great. Now for Vora's playstyle, she's more of an anti-flanker and a poke champion. She can hard dive someone and kill them, but she excels at the mid-range fight. She's very good because of her sustain, killing flankers and stopping flankers from coming in. Once you have 5 Darkness stacks and you use your Q, your Dark Siphon, you cripple the enemy and they cannot use their movement ability, so that shuts down flankers very, very hard. She's very good at kiting away as well against flankers and any damage dealers. Now, what is kiting? Kiting is the process of dealing damage to an enemy while running away with the purpose of possibly re-engaging the fight. So Vora can run away, deal damage, and then if that enemy is still chasing and they've taken so much damage, she can re-engage the fight and win. She is very good at that. She has a very, 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 very varied playstyle, which makes her very fun to play. Her damage is solid. She applies an initial burst damage and then a dot over time, so very satisfying to use. Her mobility, especially with Relentless Presence, is hyper mobility status. If you use your tendrils correctly, you can cross maps in instances. It's very fun to play and honestly makes for a very unique playstyle because of her darkness stacks. And then her ultimate, again, even with the nerfed state, I still think her ultimate is strong. It allows you to be CC immune, and you have movement speed during it, and it's an execute. An amazing, amazing ultimate. Vora as a whole is a great flanker to pick up and play. She is surface level easy, and then has a very high skill cap because of her darkness stacks and the way they augment each ability in different ways. Vora deserve to be a top 5 flank, and let's talk about the next one. Now, another disclaimer for this next one. Last but not least, we have Zhin. But with Zhin going into the Ruby crossover patch, is getting one of his main staple cards, Fan the Flames, nerfed, which we will discuss later, but I do want to address it now and state that I understand that it is being nerfed, and it is something we will discuss. But first, let's talk about talents. Guillotine and Yomi. First, Guillotine. Spite deals 20% of its target's maximum health with each hit. Now, Spite is his ultimate. You can execute people with his ultimate, and you can 100 to 0 them, but you are vulnerable and can be killed, and they can be healed. So it's a decent talent against tanks that are really pesky, just annoying, like Fernando, but it's still pretty viable. But his main viable talent is Yomi. Your heavy hit with Infernal Blade deals an additional 150 damage, which your heavy hit is your third auto attack. Zhin is pretty unique. It's not unique because other champions have this, but he has an auto attack chain. He swipes, left with his sword, right with his sword or something, and then the third shot is vertical and does more damage. That is his heavy hit. With Yomi, you deal more damage and it increases the range on it, which feels amazing. I love Yomi so much and it is very fun to play. Now with builds, let's talk about Fan the Flames first. Next patch, this is going to be changed to reduce the cooldown of Billow by 60% max for getting an elimination. Getting an elimination is going to feel good, but now it's going to be capped at 60% instead of 80 or 100%. It's going to be 12% per level, so I still think this card is viable and to be ran, but you probably want to run it closer to 5 rather than 4 and decrease your health card by 1. So with the Ruby crossover, Zhin is changing a slight bit, but just keep that in mind. The build though, Fan the Flames, Infamy, Hideout, Blade Dancer, and Up in Smoke. Up in Smoke is a very necessary card. Billow baseline is very slow now, so you need this card to increase that speed so you can get out of situations with your Billow. Blade Dancer and Hideout paired together are amazing. Reducing your whirl after you use Billow is very, very good because you need to, which we'll talk about later in the playstyle, but you need to poke, you need to whirl in, get your damage off, Billow, and then whirl out because Hideout helps with that, and Blade Dancer helps you get that little bit extra distance to get in and get out. Infamy, some extra base health is great, but next patch with the build changing, you might want to run a different 1-point card or run it. It's totally up to you. It's not necessary. The thing is, though, with Zhin, the build doesn't change from Guillotine to Yomi. It is the same build. This is kind of an end-all be-all build for Zhin, and yes, there are different variations, but this is my take on it. I really do love this build, and I think it is probably one of the better ones because of Hideout, and it's very fun to use. Zhin is a very fun character. But next, let's talk about cards. You're looking at a Nimble, Morale for Guillotine only, Veteran Haven. Zhin's cards aren't very varied. That's the problem with flanks because Wrecker's not that good. Now, you can buy Wrecker for any flank, but they don't have a typical high base damage to buy Wrecker. Now, I have had a Maeve game where I wasn't diving very often, so I kind of just bought Wrecker and killed the Fernando shield and focused down the Fernando. That can be a thing on any flank, but it's typically not your best option. Nimble, Veteran Haven, kind of the standard for Zhin. Now, with Zhin's playstyle, there's two drastically different ones. When you're playing Yomi, you're typically poking with your third shot with Yomi and waiting for an opportunity to go in. One thing with Zhin you have to learn how to do is use your first 2 attacks out of sight. So what you do is you hide behind a wall, attack 2 times, and then peek out and try to hit your third shot on someone that's not expecting a random big burst of damage to come in, because your first 2 shots have greatly reduced range and damage, so why let them know you're there and not really do any damage with them? You can use that third shot to immediately get burst damage, whirl in, get your first 2, and then another third shot, kill them, use your reversal to set up yourself so you can get your Billow off, and then you can whirl out using Hideout. It is a very fun playstyle, and it's varied because when you play Guillotine, you're looking to just sit mid-range. You have no reason to typically dive. Your damage isn't that high, but you want to farm ult charge. So you want to sit about mid-range and just get some poke off. If you see somebody low, you still have that hyper mobility with Hideout and using your loadout to your advantage to get in there, finish a kill, and get out. That's still there. But you're looking to change that up a little bit, and once you buy Morale Boost with Guillotine, you're getting more ultimates off, and it is very, very fun. I like Zhin because he has 2 different distinct playstyles, but his mobility is super fun to use, and his damages. His ultimate, again, baseline is not amazing, but with Guillotine, it augments it to where it is in a viable state. Zhin was last on this list, but definitely isn't least. I think he's one of the better flankers in the game currently, and if I were to rate him, I'd say he's top 2 flanks in the game, probably up there with Androxus. But Zhin, top 5 flanker, I love him to death myself. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I love doing these top 5 videos. They're a bit longer to do, so I appreciate a like, comment, subscribe on the video to let me know you support these and want to see more. I know this is a bit of a longer one, but there was a lot to discuss when it comes to flankers and paladins. They're very fun to play, and there's a lot of variations when it comes to builds and talents. Now, I know the cards are very similar, but again, I wanted to discuss them to make sure everybody knew, like, hey, if you skipped to this part of the video and only wanted to see this champion, these are still the items you're going to use. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I also hope you enjoy your day, night, evening, morning, dawn, dusk, wherever it is where you live. And I will see you in the next one. Later. Thank you to my biggest supporters, Incision, Jacob, Jusu, Skye, Tavy, and Austin. And to all other supporters, thank you.